Hey guys, my name is RyanCentral and welcome to HitScan. In this video we're going over the new patch 3.06 and in it has some of the most impactful changes that we've ever had, certainly aimed at Jett, Skye and a bit of KAYO love as well. We'll go in order of the patch notes, getting straight into it, talking about the initiators first because the devs start with that. This round of balance changes targets two initiators, Skye and KAYO. Skye's benefited from some quick movement shortly after her flashes and frequent seekers, so we've slowed her down a tad and bumped the cost of her ult. For KAYO, he should be a bit better at hiding his flash drive pitches, and we'll go over that shortly. For Skye, the main changes is that for her guiding light, her bird flash, as most people would call it, the unequipped time after casting or bending guiding light's projectile has been increased from 0.5 seconds to 0.75. So that's moving or putting down the guiding light, picking up your gun again, your gun will rise up a little bit slower. The wind up time also after activating a flash has gone up a little bit from 0.25 to 0.3. It basically translates to you playing off of your own guiding lights, whether you're moving them in the air, whether you're faking them or actually flashing or pop flashing. It is going to be a little bit slower, but not by much. The devs actually say this as well, saying we like that Skye's been able to play off her own flashes more and more, but lately there's a sense that it's become too effective and optimal to play off of herself in some situations. An increase to the unequipped time should make it slightly more difficult for Skye to capitalise on guiding light bird flashes as quickly as she did before, making coordinated play or different styles of flashes a little bit more competitive. The increased activation time aims to give prepared enemies a slightly larger window of time to react without trivialising her main initiator tool. I think the biggest thing that I heard from people after 3.0 for Skye was that she was effectively a duelist, and she has been. Now, she's still strong, she's certainly better than she used to be pre-3.0, but it's not as effective as, say, a Phoenix. A Phoenix should always be better at playing off his own flashes and his own utility than an initiator. An initiator's job is solely to set other people up, not necessarily themselves, which is why Breach is such a problem, because the devs could buff him to a point where he's really good at playing off his own flashes, but then he might be too strong. The other change in here is that Seekers, the ult cost has now eventually gone up to 7 ult points instead of 6. This is the biggest change that the devs could have done with her, to be honest. The devs say we've seen both the frequency of Skye's ult and its effectiveness increase as players have become more skilled with her. Looking at the recon and impact it can provide, it now seems more appropriate amongst the ults to cost 7 points. This is a big thing with Pro Scene as well, where you would see teams hungry hippos their way to getting Seekers on a regular basis. Every couple of rounds you would see it, and because of how good it is at finding info, executing onto sites, or even just holding off and execute by slowing the attackers down, there's a lot of really good solid ways to use Seekers. It's really hard to muck it up, to be honest. So I don't mind this change at all. I would prefer the change of her ult being a bit more expensive than to make Skye as rough as she was before. She's a bit rougher, she's a bit slower, but she's still pop-off material. I think you can play Skye and still be effectively strong, which is a lot better than the devs looking at Skye, seeing her pick rate and then nerfing her to the ground. That's the big one. Now we move over to KAYO that got a bit of love. We'll talk about the changes first and then talk about what the devs say because it better explains what these changes are meant to do. The first change comes to flash drive, KAYO's flash, if it wasn't obvious. The duration of the wind-up telegraph has been reduced from 0.5 to 0.3. Again, don't worry if you don't understand what this means, the devs explain it in a second. The duration of the wind-up telegraph reduced on the right click is also down from 1 second to 0.3. The audio attached to the in-flight projectile has been removed, so the flash, you won't hear it in the air anymore. The devs say this: when we first launched KAYO, we had two big questions. How strong is suppression for initiation, and could regular flashbangs exist against other flashes within VALORANT? Although we believed the ability to lob out flashes was where the power could come in, we over-indexed on telegraphing the projectile, which was holding back its success. These changes should help reward those of you that put in additional effort to those clever pop flashes. As far as ultimates go, we wanted to increase the baseline value of the ultimate by enduring a longer suppression window for those explosive site takes. And the change that came into the ultimate is once you've been downed during null command, you still pulse, you still suppress people around you, even though you get knocked down in the first second. You will still suppress for the full duration of the ultimate, instead of before, if you were using null command, you ran onto a site, you got knocked down, you got downed, the suppression would stop. So this is a real big buff, I think, to the ultimate for KAYO. So I do think that the impact is going to go up, and even a downed KAYO can still have huge impact and help for his team because he's suppressing all of those people within a pretty large vicinity. Especially now as a KAYO, you can just run onto a site with your ultimate. Don't really care if you get down. Just get onto the site, get onto a nice position that covers, you know, the full radius of where the enemy team could be, and you're still having massive impact. Of course, you don't know where the enemies are or how many enemies you've suppressed, but it's still really impactful. But basically, for the flashes, if you still don't understand, it's going to be a lot harder to know that a KAYO is about to flash you. You won't hear the audio in the air. You won't see the right click pop flash as quickly as you used to, meaning that you've got to be a lot more impactful. And KAYOs that are very good at flashing from Counter-Strike are going to have a great old time here. I like these changes. They're not too insane. It's not like they're buffing KAYO a crazy amount, but I'm sure Steel from 100 Thieves is going to really like these changes. And the ultimate as well is pretty nice. Let's talk about the Jett nerfs. All of these are pretty impactful in various ways. For one, the smokes, the cloudbursts that Jett have, she used to have 3, now she has 2. The Blade Storm, the right click alternate fire, no longer recharges Jett's kunai, so even if you right click an enemy and you kill him, you won't get a recharge of your knives anymore. It's just left clicks that you're able to do that with, which is a massive nerf to our ultimate. But also, Blade Storm got a little bit of other stuff. The right click alt fire, the damage changes are reverted, the damage and multipliers will mirror the left click, meaning that effectively the right click is a lot stronger. You can confirm a kill where sometimes it's a little bit iffy before, but if you do right click an enemy, you won't be able to use the ult. Rolling back onto the cloudburst changes, the devs say, our feeling here is that Jett has won too many smokes, and it's contributed to a sense that she could get away with using them at any time, have more to spare, or spam them without much thought. The reduced charges for a smoke should hopefully make the choice on whether to smoke a choke point, smoke a path for a dash, or make a one-way a more tactical one. I really like this change. I think that certainly when you have the dash or a Jett opping, you could get sort of pushed into a corner, you could smoke, you could dash, you could use all of that utility to get out, but you'd still have maybe a flash left over for later in the round, right? So I think the whole change here is, okay, if you're playing aggressively as a Jett, you're out with the op, you find an enemy, you smoke off 2 smokes to try and get away or get into a position to get a kill, you won't have one spare to cover up a choke point that the enemies could come out of. I really like this change. I don't think it's going to drastically tank Jett's pick rate. I don't think any of these changes are really going to bring Jett down to a point where she's not played in the pro scene, but it makes it so you don't get away with as much, which I like. For the Blade Storm, right click no longer recharging Jett's knives. The devs say by removing the recharge, we hope Jett mains will optimize for the single kunai kills in order to keep the Blade Storm going and really play into the high precision fantasy that Jett is all about. We want to incentivize the high skill primary fire kills while still allowing the low risk, low reward burst fire option, which again is a massive change. I think it's the biggest change that Jett has had against her, but I think it's more than fair for the reasons given, especially now that the right click is a lot more impactful. As the devs say, we've seen Jett's right click be very unpredictable and feel that it's confusing to have different damage rules than the left click. The charge should unify how both modes of fire work and provide a little more predictability if Jetts decide to go for the single kill as opposed to chaining. And yeah, I mean, it's about that decision, right? Is you can dash onto a site, right click anybody that's here, confirm one kill, or try and play to chain up kills later in the round, which is a lot harder to do and requires more precision. I love these changes. I am a little bit anti-Jett. I would like to see other duelists come into the fray, but Jett is still going to be the most popular duelist in the pro scene. She's the only one that can really handle the op to a solid level. There's Raze as well, but she's been nerfed and her costs have been upped exponentially. So Jett, I like these changes, but I'm curious on what you guys think. I think it's a bit harsh, but more than fair to the agent. But I'm curious on what you guys think. That's not all though. Actually, I think these are my favourite changes in the patch that we haven't yet to speak about. And it's to do with a lot of the boxes and the wall penetration for the sites. I think last patch or a couple of patches ago, you can now wall pen people through the green boxes on site. So if you have a Guardian, you have an Odin, you can spray through these boxes and pretty much kill people either side, especially the green areas. The actual metal steel ones are not penetratable, and that is the big change that's come in with this patch across 5 different maps. The first of which is Fracture. This is picture A, you can see what the normal site looks like, and picture B, the main box in the top center, is now unable to break. So it's no longer pennable, and it should create a safer planted option for attackers while retaining a riskier but more powerful option. The reason why I wanted to start with Fracture is it gets into nicely with Icebox, where the full crate stack on B site is no longer pennable. This is to create safer planted options for attackers, which is great because if you look at the higher ELOs, the higher pro scene, Sage is a must pick because you can only have the Sage wall to have a safe plant on the B site. That's because that box is pennable, you're required to put a Sage wall up to try and protect the default plant. Now, you probably still need a Sage. I think the map Icebox needs a lot more doing to it to make it safer on the B site, but this is a huge step in the right direction. It means the teams that don't like playing Sage, which are like 100 Thieves, Envy, Guild, FPX, these are teams that don't like to play Sage in the pro scene, they can get away with that a little bit more. It's not going to be easy, it's very difficult to do that in the pro scene, but it's a little bit more help that goes their way, and I think it goes a long way for those teams too. I really like this change. On Haven it's similar, the main box in the center right, as you can see, is no longer pennable at the bottom. You also have the 2 crates on Ascent, the one on the right hand side is now fully reinforced. And also on Bind, the main spine of the triple stack planted spot is safer, that you're not going to get penned from the back of CT, the back of the A site. I love these changes, I think they're great. I like the fact that the devs have realized that making these green boxes fully pennable is kind of scary, not fun to play against, so having some reinforcement to some key areas, some defaulting spots so to speak, I think is really nice. I'm curious to see how that changes up planted spots for the pro scene and just how less of a pain in the ass it's going to be playing in the rest of the game. For the rest of it, there's been some updates. The PBE's had some changes. Map fixes have come into Icebox. You no longer get AFK penalties in Deathmatch, which is kind of nice. But this is all I want to talk about in this patch. Some really nice changes in here, I think. I've been asking for some pretty impactful ones since 3.0. It's been 6 weeks now. I think it's been longer than that when it comes to some of the changes that have come in. It's been well over a couple of months now since KAYO came into the game. So I'm a big fan of these changes. I think they went for the right stuff. I don't think they nerfed Skye or Jett to the ground, but it certainly made them less impactful, and I'm curious to see how good the KO changes are going to be, whether we get more in the future. That's all for this video. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Bit of a breakdown of some of the changes in a bit more detail on what I think. Again, thanks for watching. Take care. We'll see you next time.